My husband, Arthur, was a man of absolute honor. He spent 30 years in the United States Army, climbing the ranks to become a respected colonel before he finally retired. He was a mountain of a man, disciplined, deeply protective, and fiercely loyal. When we married, he promised to always shield me from the storms of life. I never realized that the biggest storm would come from his own family, and that it would hit the moment his heart stopped beating. Arthur and I had a beautiful life in our countryside home, a property he had bought and fully paid for long before we even met. But while Arthur was full of warmth, his mother, Beatrice, was made of ice. From the very first day I was introduced to her, she made it clear that I was an outsider. To Beatrice, no woman was ever going to be good enough for her golden boy son, the colonel. She was an incredibly controlling, bitter woman who believed the world owed her everything because of her son's status. Arthur knew exactly how toxic his mother could be, which is why he maintained a strict, distant boundary with her. He always told me, "Don't worry about her, Sarah. You are my wife, and my life belongs to you." Then, the unthinkable happened. Arthur suffered a massive, sudden heart attack while working in our garden. Just like that, the anchor of my life was gone. I was entirely consumed by a tidal wave of grief. My mind was numb, and my heart was shattered. But while the tears were still fresh on my face, the vultures began to circle. Less than 24 hours after Arthur's passing, before his military funeral had even been arranged, the front door of my house flew open. It was Beatrice, followed closely by Arthur's estranged younger brother, Julian. They didn't come to offer a shoulder to cry on. They didn't come to comfort a grieving widow. Beatrice marched into my living room, her eyes scanning the furniture like a custom agent inspecting contraband. Without a shred of empathy, she looked at me and said, "Arthur is gone now, Sarah. This house belongs to the family line. My husband and I raised a colonel, and his legacy belongs to us. You have 1 week to pack your bags and leave. We will be taking over the estate, his military pensions, and his life insurance." I was too weak and heartbroken to fight. I simply stared at her in utter disbelief. Julian was already in the other room, going through Arthur's study, looking for financial documents and valuables. When I told them to leave, Beatrice scoffed, claiming that as his mother, she had the ultimate legal right to everything her son owned. She genuinely believed that because I didn't have children with Arthur, I had no right to his legacy. The nightmare escalated quickly. 2 weeks after the funeral, I received a court summons. Beatrice had hired a ruthless lawyer and filed a massive lawsuit against me. She was contesting my right to the estate, claiming that Arthur had been under undue influence when he managed his finances, and asserting that she was the rightful beneficiary of his military estate and life insurance. She even falsely claimed that Arthur had promised her the house in writing before he died. The weeks leading up to the court date were a living hell. I was grieving the love of my life while being publicly dragged through the mud by his own mother. She told everyone in our community that I was a gold digger who was trying to steal a dead soldier's hard-earned wealth. I felt completely isolated, powerless, and utterly exhausted. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was cold and intimidating. Beatrice sat across from me, dressed in elegant black, looking smug and entirely confident. She genuinely believed she was about to walk away with everything. Her lawyer stood up and gave a lengthy, dramatic speech about a mother's devotion to her heroic son, arguing that the estate should rightfully revert back to the matriarch of the family. They presented a forged, handwritten note that they claimed Arthur had written, expressing his wish to leave the house to his mother. The judge, a stern, sharp-eyed man named Judge Miller, listened silently. He adjusted his glasses and looked through the pile of documents on his desk. The room was dead silent. I held my breath, my hands shaking under the table, praying that justice would somehow prevail. Judge Miller finally cleared his throat and looked directly at Beatrice. The courtroom grew even quieter. "Mrs. Beatrice," the judge began, his voice echoing off the walls. "You have brought a highly dramatic case into my courtroom today, claiming a mother's right to a decorated colonel's estate. You have presented a note claiming your son wished to bypass his wife of 15 years. However, the law does not operate on greed and noise. It operates on facts." The judge then picked up a thick, sealed folder with an official military seal on it. "What you and your counsel failed to realize," Judge Miller continued, a cold smile touching his lips, "is that Colonel Arthur was a meticulous military strategist. He knew exactly who you were, and he anticipated this exact moment. 3 months before his tragic passing, knowing his health was declining, the colonel visited his military legal counsel and updated all of his official documents. The judge opened the folder and read aloud. According to the official Department of Defense records, the survivor benefit plan, the military pension, and the entire life insurance policy are strictly and irrevocably designated to his wife, Sarah. Furthermore, the deed to the house is registered as a joint tenancy with right of survivorship, meaning the moment he passed, the property became 100% hers. It does not go to probate, and it cannot be contested. Beatrice's face instantly lost all of its color. She gripped her lawyer's arm, her jaw dropping. But the note he wrote me. She cried out, breaking courtroom protocol. Judge Miller banged his gavel with a thunderous crack. Silence, he roared. The note you provided has already been analyzed by a forensic document examiner. The signature is an amateur forgery. Not only are your claims entirely fraudulent, but you have also submitted false evidence to a court of law. The judge leaned forward, his eyes locking onto Beatrice with absolute disdain. Your son loved his wife, and he protected her from you in life, and he has protected her from you in death. I am dismissing this lawsuit with prejudice. Furthermore, I am ordering a full investigation into the forgery presented by the plaintiff, and I am awarding all of Sarah's legal fees to be paid entirely by you, Beatrice. Beatrice slumped back into her chair, utterly defeated, her face twisted in a mix of rage and humiliation. The greedy empire she had tried to build on her son's grave had collapsed in a single moment. I sat there, tears streaming down my face, but for the first time in weeks, they were tears of pure relief. As I walked out of the courtroom, leaving a panicked Beatrice arguing with her lawyer, I looked up and whispered a thank you to Arthur. Even from the heavens, my colonel had fought one last battle to keep me safe.